Okay, good morning everybody. We're going to go ahead and get started now. My name is Chris Binding. I'm the Product Marketing Manager here at EMS Software. I'm joined by Akshay Mahajan, our VP of Product Management, and Billie Hawkins, our Solutions Consultant. Today we're going to run through the second part of this week's webinar series focused on automated report delivery, enhancements to notification rules, and the new easy deployment of the desktop client. First, just a couple of introductory slides from me. Some housekeeping items. Your attendee lines are muted right now, so we cannot hear you. If you do have questions, please submit them via the Q&A box. We'll do our best to respond to those as we go through the webinar via the chat box. Otherwise, we'll get to as many of the questions live on the line towards the end of the webinar. Also, we will make recordings available both of yesterday's webinar as well as today's webinar to anybody who registered for either webinar this week. That email will go out this afternoon, so if you want to forward it to colleagues or if you just want to watch it back again, you will be able to do that later today. So what's on the agenda for today? We're going to do a very quick recap of what we covered yesterday. So if you were unable to join us yesterday, you can at least get a sense of what we covered and then go ahead and watch that recording later on. The three demonstration areas that I mentioned earlier that we're going to cover today are the automated reports, enhancements to notification rules, and easy installation for desktop users. Billie's going to take you through those. Then Akshay is going to join us and just recap some of the things we talked about yesterday, the system requirements, the upgrade considerations, some additional items, so some extra enhancements that will be included in the release on Friday that are not considered the core functionality enhancements that we're going to cover today. And then there'll be time for questions, and then I'll finish up with a quick recap of what to expect next in terms of when the software will be available and also the documentation that you can expect to have. So let's start then with a quick recap of what we covered yesterday. So if you were on the line with us yesterday, you would have heard myself and Akshay with Logan demonstrate the booking level check-in and UDF enhancements that are also coming this January release. This is a quick recap of the booking level check-in piece. So booking level check-in is a rework of the current building level check-in that is in the product today. The problem being that it was identified that meeting organizers sometimes don't use the space they reserve. So it's one thing to reserve the space, but how do you know if it's actually being used? So the booking level check-in will help you to track these no-shows by either requiring or requesting check-in. And users can check in using multiple touch points. So Logan took you through those yesterday in terms of being able to do it via an email response, via the kiosk, as well as being able to do it in the desktop client itself from an admin perspective. This new feature is configurable by room. And like I mentioned before, the benefit being that the rooms can be freed up to be used by others. So it just results in better space utilization for you and ultimately more accurate stats around your space utilization. Logan also covered some enhancements to the user-defined fields. So we did have some feedback that some of the custom fields currently included when requesting a meeting or a space were just a little bit confusing. They become very, very long-winded if you have to ask several questions to get the information that you need. We've now included support for multi-select UDFs and also the ability to create dependent questions between the UDFs. So you're able to create much shorter, concise forms now and templates when you're asking users to request a space. Makes it a much more enjoyable experience for them, and it also makes it a lot easier for you as admin users and expert users to collect that information. So there are some enhancements there that Logan covered, and like I said, you'll be able to view the recording of that webinar yesterday. If you weren't able to join us, that email will be sent out later today. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to Billie, and he's going to take you through the first of his three demonstration areas.
Thank you, Chris. First one we're going to cover today is automated reports in the newest version of EMS software. And really what we want to talk about is the problem that some of our customers have identified and how we've solved for that. The problem today with regular reporting is that if you wanted a report, you have to go into the system itself, the desktop client, in order to get it. That means enabling access to the desktop client to your facilities management teams, your catering teams, even your administration teams, simply or maybe just for the purpose of getting a report. That means you have to remember to trigger that report, fire off that report, email that report, etc. And it requires having access to that desktop client in order to do that. After hearing that kind of situation with a lot of our customers, we've solved for that by allowing configurable delivery reports. And what that really means is sales statistics and demographic reports can be automatically emailed out at a scheduled interval in a PDF format to anyone within your organization or even outside of your organization. The benefit of this obviously saves time for your operational staff from having to go in, trigger a report themselves, email it off to a specific set of people, or recompile it every time you need it. So what we're going to do is go ahead and show you what that looks like within the system today. So for those of you who are not familiar, this is the desktop client within EMS. Basically what we've done is we've created a new area under the reports called Automated Report Delivery. That pulls up this window that allows you to create a series of automated reports that can be emailed out to your users, to your management teams, etc. Now, as I mentioned, the reports for automated delivery that are available fall under your daily, your sales, your statistics, as well as your custom-built query builder reports. Those all get listed here. Now, the benefit of this particular system is that it fires off automatically. There's no need for user intervention once the automated report delivery system is set up against one of the reports. I'm going to pull up a report right now and show you what that looks like. So this particular automated report that I've automated in this particular window is our utilization report, and that falls under our statistical room utilization area. Now, the way automated reports work is it relies on a consistent set of data. So we memorize a report. For those of you that are familiar with memorized reports, we create a report once, we memorize it, or in our case, we save it, and then we can automate that report for scheduled delivery. In this case, I've chosen the Chicago building with different statuses, different event types, my employee types, and my options. I've saved this as my quarterly report for room utilization, and I've chosen to automate it. Now, when I automate it, I can simply click Automate here, which will bring up the automated report area and allow me to save this as a scheduled repeatable report, or I can use the report's automated report delivery and choose to create a report from that, or a schedule from that report itself. In this case, I've already done that. So my room utilization year-to-date report, which is the same report as this one, shows up here as a saved queried report. Basically, what this is going to do is I choose what section of the report I want, the report type, and the saved report that I've selected up here. I choose my delivery schedule in which I want that to be actually delivered to whomever I've asked the system to send it to, when it should be sent, and what the frequency in which that scheduled report should actually be sent. Now, the reporting period here is something you should be familiar with if you've used these report types before, because this is actually saying what range do you want the actual report to show you when it gets sent to you. In this case, I've chosen year-to-date to get my entire utilization report for my Chicago building for year-to-date. If I want, I can also specify where the email comes from, and we do have some variables that you can apply in the subject field, and then who you want that email to be sent to on that scheduled interval. We'll take a look at what that one looks like within our system here. So the message that comes through when it's actually delivered comes through in a PDF format, and it comes through as the name of your report. So when I open this report, as you can see, the scheduled utilization report that I've created is generated for me because we're still in January of this year. Year-to-date is the 28th, end of month kind of thing. In this case, I did have my specified buildings, locations, and status types, event types, etc., set up in that memorized report or that saved report. So my automated delivery would only report back the information that I have saved in that report. In this case, the Chicago building and only the conference and training rooms. So really, to recap what we've talked about so far is that our automated report delivery system applies to your daily sales and statistic reports. It also applies to query reports that are designated at the reservation or sales and statistics level. So basically, any reports that are at the reservation level or that refer to your daily statistics or sales level reporting. Automated reports can be sent to multiple parties, meaning that you can send it to as many email addresses as you want. There is no pre-established limit for the amount of reports you can send and the amount of people you can send those reports to. And of course, the amount of recipients or distribution lists are not limited as well, so you can also include an entire team of people with regards to that. Now, with automated reports, you can also send a lot of your daily reports like banquet event orders and things like that too. So keep that in mind when you're talking about your service delivery management teams, like your facilities management teams. That can actually result in saving a lot of requirements for opening the desktop client. Next area of demonstration is our enhancements to notification rules, and this is a highly requested set of features that we've gone through. The problem that we've found and our customers have identified is that keeping operations people in the loop has become paramount, and meeting organizers oftentimes have to over-communicate to those industry vendors, whether it be external, internal, catering, AV teams, etc., or there's not enough communication, or they had to find some level of workarounds in order to make that happen. So what we've done is we've included some additional features within the notification rule sets to try to enhance the ability for EMS to provide those level of notifications for you. What we've done to resolve some of these is creating a role-based notification system, not just a user-based. We've increased a lot of the granularity for the service order rules. We've included notifications not just by status, but also by setup type. And our notifications can now be reported in hours and not just days. So for those of you who have notification reports now, you'll find that the additional ability to schedule 3 hours prior to the meeting versus a day prior can be really useful within your system. I'm going to show you what that looks like as well. So within configuration, administration, notification rules, same places they've always been within EMS. You'll note that opening up your notification rule will include some additional feature sets within that. So in this case, I have the ability to use my setup types here when I'm dealing with a booking level notification rule, including all the setup types that I have made available to me. This is kind of a great feature with your setup teams. So when they need to come in and change the architecture of a room or do a layout change from a classroom to a conference room or something like that, this is where that notification can be triggered. Also, as I noted in the slide before, the notification triggers can be set to hours instead of days, as well as prior to the event start time or the reserved start time. The distinction there, for those of you who use setup times, is that the reserved start time is the event time plus the setup and teardown. When we're talking about actual catering or service order rules, we have the additional categories, states, grouping, and resources listed here. Now basically, this particular notification rule allows me to notify myself of new and changes to service orders in an approved status or state for only gourmet coffee service. Why is that useful? Well, maybe you have catering teams or service teams that are only responsible for one specific function. Maybe you have an IT team that's only responsible for video conferencing or laptop deliveries. Maybe you have a catering team that's only responsible for initial setups in the morning. Well, what this granularity will allow you to do is set up scheduled notifications for those people or those departments so that only the information they need goes to them. So when we look at this one, for example, I'm telling the system that only notify my catering team if there's an approved state in the catering service order that has coffee in it. That way I know that when I need coffee for my meeting in the morning, that the catering teams specific to delivering that type of service will be notified for that. They won't be inundated with a bunch of other notifications that aren't relevant to them. Maybe they're not in charge of the banquet service. Maybe they're not in charge of lunches or dinners. This will granulize that and allow them to only get the notifications they need. One thing that I also like to mention with our new notification rules is the fact that you can send them to multiple recipients just as you always could, but we've included a number of additional items that you can send by default. Instead of specifying specific individuals that you may want to email to or notify with the notification rules, you can actually send it to your event coordinator, the web user that created the actual reservation, or you can send it to your groups and contacts under that. In my case, I have my groups and contacts, or my groups and first contact listed as employee and assistant. Those are just labels that may be changed in your organization. That might be groups and first contact or departments and employees, etc. As always, I can also notify people via normal email addresses, distribution lists, etc. So to recap notification rules, basically what we're saying is that the role-based system of notifications allow granularization of service orders and booking level rules by setup type. They also allow you to use resources, categories, and states to define whether or not a notification is getting fired. And we also offer the ability now to send out notifications in hour increments instead of just days. And that's a great feature set for those of you who need your catering teams to be notified within a certain time frame before the meeting and not just days before the meeting. So our final demonstration for today is the installation for our desktop users. And what that is our new installation system for the desktop client. This is mainly for our IT folks in the group, but what we're trying to solve for is the problem that customers have identified, that for those of you who have to walk to everybody's desk and do a manual upgrade or installation of the desktop clients, it can be cumbersome. We've recognized that for a while now, and we understand that need. So to solve for that, we've done a one-click installation with an automatic update type installer. What this means is that your end users will silently be updated as your IT teams update one version of the software. The benefit, of course, to this is that it reduces time and resources to your IT or administrative staff to walk around and make sure everybody's on the same version of the EMS desktop client. How do we do that? I'll give you an example. So the EMS desktop client, through the one-click installation, what we actually do now is we provide you a web service that you can install right next to your web application, formerly known as virtual EMS, to actually provide your end users the ability to download and install the client themselves. This is a one-click solution. Basically what it does is when I click download and install, it's going to prompt me to save this, the current version of the software in a location of my choice. And then it's going to prompt me, once it's downloaded, to open that particular item. In this case, I'm going to go ahead and open it here. It will install the new version of your EMS client desktop software. It updates it from your web service server, and then it will automatically start this. Now, the benefits that come from this particular method of installation is threefold. First and foremost, your IT team in one step can make sure that everybody is on the same version of the desktop client. Once that desktop client is installed using that one-click solution, every time the user opens EMS, it's going to go back to that web service and ask for the newest and latest version that your IT teams have installed. Also, thirdly, the idea of changing databases was always a concern with the folks in the desktop client. Now, normally you'd have to go up to your file menu and manually type in the example of a test database or server. We've changed that a little bit by offering a drop-down connection window that allows you to specify all of your connections to your different databases, whether they be test, development, production, etc. And it allows you to actually list them out and shows you up here in the top title bar which database and server you're actually connected to and which one is running. That allows your IT administrators or support teams to quickly understand what database you're in and what you're using. I should also note that this version of the desktop client does also solve a security problem that IT folks have been experiencing. This particular desktop client no longer talks directly to the database through a database server port connection. What it does now is it actually connects through the web service and allows the web service to talk to the database. That resolves a lot of firewall concerns and security concerns with connecting directly to a database on an application layer. So what have we talked about in this particular installation method? Well, there are still two methods of the desktop web or desktop client deployment. There is the standalone version, and then there is the one-click web deployment version. The web deployment method, as I illustrated in the example before, is the recommended method because it is updated when the IT teams update their version on the server, which means that everybody stays in alignment with the version number for builds, patches, etc. And your IT team controls when that upgrade happens. There is no calling home on this software, so it does not actually call back to EMS software itself here in the Denver office or on our servers or anything to try to download the latest update. So it is still in the hands of your IT team to control when those particular deployments get updated. But rest assured that once they run an updater against that web service, then everybody who opens up EMS in your organization will get the latest and greatest version from that particular upgrade. Using the web deployment, the check does get made to your deployment location for those updates, and it does occur silently. So your end users, your everyday users, your expert users, there's no interaction for them to actually have to perform, and they'll never see that message that some of you may have seen that says your web client is out of date or your desktop client is out of date or you're not running the same version of that the server has. So we eliminate that completely. That said, if you do wish to use the standalone method, you certainly can still do that. The same rules apply that they always have applied. The download will be available via the emssoftware.com website in the support section. But you will not gain any of the features. So we will continue to update with this current version in the standalone method, but there will be no database switching model that I explained earlier. There is no automatic updates of your end user clients, and the standalone installation will still connect directly to the database using a SQL port and not to the web service as the web deployment version does. So those are some considerations to take when deciding which version you want to do going forward.
Thanks, Billy. Let's move on to doing a recap of the system requirements. Before we get into the system requirements, very quickly, a quick glance or a table showing you what all components have been updated in this release. A quick reminder that this release is a major release. We are changing the version number from V43 to V44. So this means that all the components that are of the EMS software needs to be updated with this release. So you notice I have database, desktop client, virtual EMS, Outlook plugin, kiosk. all of them as marked as yes when it comes to their being updated. This also means that when you are looking to move to this release, you need to keep in mind that you need to update all the components and module at the same time. You cannot just update the desktop client and not update the database or vice versa, and that applies to all components in this list. System requirements for the desktop client, there are two differences. Microsoft Vista is no longer supported, and Windows 10 is the new OS that we support with the January release. .NET Framework support, current version was 3.5. In January release, we'll be supporting 4.5.2. So 4.5.2 will be the minimum requirement for .NET Framework. SQL Server 2005 is something that we do not support on the database side starting with this release. 2008, 2012, and 2014 still remain supported and will support the latest service packs of all those three versions. On the web server side, Windows Server 2003 and IS6 combination is not supported anymore. We have not added the support of Windows Server 2006 and IS10 at this time, so it's calling out what we have not added support for. On the application pool running, you still need to use .NET Framework 2.0, and the .NET Framework that needs to be installed on the web server has now been updated to 4.5.2 instead of 3.5. On the virtual EMS side, from a desktop browser perspective, we support 8, 9, 10, 11, Firefox, Chrome, and Safari on Mac. We do not support Microsoft Edge with this release. That's something we'll add in the next release. Keep a note for 8, 9, and 10 of IE. That is something that Microsoft has deprecated support for starting this month. So as you go into this upgrade, my suggestion will be not to go to 8, 9, or 10 just because Microsoft has ended the support. We have kept that support for this release just because we wanted to give you time to transition out of it. As we move into our next releases, we would have to end the support for some of these older versions of IE. And our goal will be to stick with what Microsoft will support going forward, and that is going to be IE 11 and Edge. On the mobile browser side, it's the same. We support Chrome on Android, Chrome on iOS 8 and 9, Safari on iOS 8 and 9 as well. From the Outlook side, it remains the same. The only thing we still don't support is Outlook 2016. That is something we will add support for in our next release. .NET Framework version on the Outlook side has also been updated from 3.5 to 4.5.2, so that's a prerequisite even for the Outlook client. On the Exchange side, we support 2007, 10, and 13. We have not added support for 2016. Upgrade considerations. So this was a quick recap of the system requirements. On the upgrade consideration side, as I mentioned earlier, this release is a major release which updates all the components of the software. So please keep in mind that you need to update the database and other components at the same time. Web client users, web client will no longer be available starting with the January release. So as you have to update all the components, you will notice that you will not get the web client component because that is something that we are not shipping starting from this release. So when you're considering to upgrade, please ensure that you have a migration plan for the web client users to move to the desktop client. On the configuration side, on the update, when you run the database update, we are going to migrate your existing configurations as is. One thing to keep in mind for your configurations is that, as you notice, Billie and Logan talked about today and yesterday about the various new features that we have added in the release. You do want to take an opportunity during this upgrade to reevaluate your configurations to keep in mind the new features that are in there. For example, new settings in the notification rules, booking level check-in, automated report delivery. That might, all of those things might impact your existing configurations. So you do want to reevaluate some of those configurations based on these new features. Customization considerations. if you have any customizations that are done to the core product, either by EMS software or by a third-party company, please keep in mind that the database and the APIs have been updated in this release. So an integration point going into the database or to the API needs to be retested. It might not need to be redone, but it needs to be retested. If it's a customization, it's a complete responsibility on your side to make sure you do that testing. If that customization, whether that was a custom report or some other customization that was done by EMS software and current with the maintenance of that, then please contact support to let us know when you plan to upgrade so that we can schedule those customizations to be updated to this release. There is a notification sent specifically to those customers who have this customization with EMS software already, so you would have already been notified for it. If you haven't received the notification, there are two reasons. Either you don't have such customization with EMS software, or for some reason your email ID might not be here. So if you think you're the latter, please contact support proactively to let them know. If you're the former, you do not need to worry about it. For any other customizations that you've done which are not through EMS software, please make sure you contact that party, whether that is an internal IT or whether that is a third-party vendor, and make sure that they have a plan on updating that as well with you. The information regarding the updates, both for database and API, is provided as a documentation as we go along with the software. I talked about that you need to have a strategy to move the web client users to use the desktop client. So just to give you some pointers towards various alternatives that exist for people who need to move to this, the first thing is you do need to migrate them to the desktop client. But when you think about that, please do think about the users who no longer need access to the desktop client anymore, because you can automate certain reports for them. By the virtue of the automated report delivery feature, you might eliminate the need for them having to go to the desktop client and look at that report manually, because you could deliver that report to them automatically on a frequency that they need it for. So make sure you do that evaluation first. That might eradicate the need of using any client in any case. Once you've eradicated that, then for all the other users, you do have to migrate them to the desktop client. And the desktop client is Windows only. So if you are a Mac user and you were using the web client, your options will be to use virtual machines, Bootcamp, Parallels, and there are many other companies who provide virtual machines. Remote desktop, Citrix, those are the other two options that are available. Tablets, other than Windows-based tablets, so tablets like iOS or Android, if it is a Windows-based tablet, then most likely you can install the Windows desktop client on itself. So if you were using Windows tablets to do this before, not RT, but most of those Windows tablets are capable of running the desktop client itself. So that would be an option when you're doing a Windows-based tablet. For all other tablets, Remote Desktop and Citrix are a good option to use. If there were Windows users, then obviously you can install the desktop client using Web Deploy or standalone installer. Those are the two different ways you can install that now. Or you can also do it via Citrix. So this gives you a quick cheat sheet of various options that are available for the people who you need to migrate to the desktop client. In terms of eligibility, you need to be current with your maintenance agreement. If you are current with your maintenance agreement, then all of these upgrades are included as part of your maintenance agreement itself. So if you have the current maintenance agreement up to date with us, then you would automatically be notified about the availability of this release, and you very much will be able to download it and use it. Exceptions are EMS Lite customers, because we are no longer updating the EMS Lite part of the software. I want to keep in mind that the booking level check-in or the check-in functionality that we talked about yesterday does not apply to the EMS professional customers. So if you don't know what check-in means, you're fine. Just don't worry about what the booking level check-in is. Moving on to some additional items. So apart from those main features that we talked about in these last 2 days, there are other minor enhancements that we have done. Academic scheduling optimization, virtual EMS web request streamlining, virtual EMS web menu streamlining, building level check-in transition, and visitor management improvements. Academic scheduling optimization enhancement. The expert users now have an option to optimize non-course booking also when they are creating a scenario. This option is controlled by a checkbox, which you can change while creating or editing a scenario. If you enable this checkbox, then the existing non-course bookings will also be considered when the optimization is run. On the virtual EMS side, the web request only mode is no longer available to the authenticated web users. The idea here is we're trying to streamline things for the authenticated web users who have other options to do these things as well. There is no change for the unauthenticated user, so they still will continue getting the web request, the web process template matching to this. The term guest request will replace any use of web request or classic request labels within desktop client. Within desktop clients, we have various places where we talk about the web request and the classic request. We have streamlined that, and all of them are being now called guest request. This will allow or make the alignment of the web process templates better for the user bases that we have, and also eliminate any confusion that you have regarding web reservations and web requests. The another thing around web menu streamlining, browse facility menu has been removed now. The default setup and capacity information remains available in the for space view. Knowledge base menu has also been removed from the virtual EMS. I do want to point out, we talked about this yesterday regarding the booking level check-in. If you're an existing customer who has been using what was called the building level check-in, in version 43 we introduced a new way of doing a check-in, which was booking check-in. And now with V44, we are deprecating the building level check-in functionality. The key here was that people who wanted to have these check-in enabled into their rooms, they're very worried about people booking the space and not using it. Typically, when you require check-in, you enforce things like, if nobody check in within the first 15 minutes of the meeting start, then cancel that meeting so that it can be made available to other people. If you are enforcing things like that, one of the things we heard from all these customers is that they actually want to get better at making sure that they know who is using what room at what time, even if they're doing booking. So just doing it at building level did not help that cause. They wanted much more granularity in terms of, for every booking, you want to make sure that people are explicitly checking in. So that's why we moved from building level check-in to a concept of booking level check-in, and that's what you'll see starting from here onwards. So now onwards, whenever we talk about check-in, we always mean booking level. There is no concept of building level. Just a reminder, there was a checkout at the building level as well, which now has been transitioned to end now. So when you do end now, that is pretty much like doing a checkout in the building world. One of the things that a lot of people were using building level check-in was through kiosk. And one of the things it presented is in its UI, it had a button, and when you walked in and you searched, you could click one button in check-in and it will check into you all the bookings that you had in the building. What we have done for that functionality is we are only having booking level check-in now, but we have added a different button there which says check-in all, which will check you in individually into every booking that you have searched for. So from an end user perspective, they're still able to check into multiple bookings at the same time. Behind the scene, we're not using the building level check-in as a way to do that, but an individual booking check-in that we are doing. So we have kept in mind those transitions, especially in kiosk, to make that easy for that as well. Moving on to the visitor management improvements. So the area of visitor management we have done some improvements in that area. Two ones that I want to talk about is allow customization of built-in attendee category and addition of attendee categories during the reservation creation process. So we had a built-in attendee category, and there were a couple of fields that we provide along with that built-in attendee category. So far, you had no way to relabel those fields. Now, with this release, you'll be able to relabel those fields, and I'm showing a screenshot here where I'm relabeling what is called the attendee notes to called visitor notes to make it more prominent. You can relabel any other of those attendee category fields as well. Earlier, the attendee category could only be provided by editing your booking or reservation. Now, at the time of creation of these reservations and booking, you can also provide information about your attendee category. So you see a screenshot here during the creation process that I'm able to provide you the list of visitors that are going to be part of this reservation. So this information is now available during the reservation creation process, or as fondly known as during the checkout process. The way this will appear, it will not appear by default. The appearing of this attendee category is now controlled at every category of the type attendee, and providing you with a configuration saying available at checkout. This option was grayed out for this category type before. Now this is enabled. So if you want to enable something, it will not magically appear. You'll have to go to that category and enable that. That finishes all the additional items that I wanted to cover. I'm going to pass it over to Chris for the next section.
Yeah, thank you, Akshay. So we've had a number of questions coming in. I think we've been trying to get to as many of them as we can via the checkbox that I mentioned. So we'll go ahead and address some of the ones we might not have gotten to yet, as many as we can. I'll also restate a couple of the ones that we may have answered already just for everybody to hear. So let's start with, there's a couple of questions around the automated reporting. Billie, would you mind just restating for the audience the customization options in the automated reports in terms of the email body and the subject line?
Sure. So the email body of the subject line, or the subject line itself, has a legend parameter in it that allows you to specify specifically what particular piece of information you want in that. Currently, within automated reports, was that Chris?
Yes.
Within automated reports, you have the ability in the legend, and I'll pull this up for you all to see. You have the ability to use the reporting period in your support legend, as I'm illustrating right here on the screen, basically allowing me to label my subject of the email that I'm sending out to my individuals with the reporting period within it. So if you are using any of these reporting periods up here, whether it be year-to-date, hourly, weekly, monthly, etc., or your own custom range of dates, that would provide that level of information within the body subject of the message itself. So in this case, I can do today, tomorrow, yesterday, last week, or a number of days prior, a number of days after, etc. And that would actually show up here. So if I do year-to-date, it would say room year-to-date utilization report B44- January 1st to January 28th of this year.
Is that just for the subject line, Billie? Can
it is,
the body of the email be changed at all?
No, currently it is just for the subject of the email. The body of the email only reports the name of the report by its description here, the report that it was sent out, and that it was automatically generated by EMS.
Thank you, Billie. Actually, we had one question. You mentioned earlier that master calendar will receive minor enhancements. Can you talk to what types of things that might mean?
We have been putting or changing things in the master calendar with every monthly patch itself. So a lot of those things are already documented under the monthly patch. There are some more minor items that we have documented in the documentation for everybody to know. There isn't anything, big worth talking about right now in this forum. So my suggestion will be to look at the various monthly patches that have happened for a while, in case you have not used them or updated them to those monthly patches, and also look at the documentation. for the master calendar for this release to see that.
Great, thanks, Akshay. Let's see, what other questions do we have here? One question we did get, Billie, that I think you answered was when an email is sent from the desktop, which IP address is the sender? Is it coming from the desktop PC IP address or the server IP address?
Sure, that's a great question. So the way our notification and automated report delivery service works is that nothing ever gets sent out from the client directly. The desktop client does not control the sending of that information. Once you save an automated report or notification rule, that is put into the database that a web service on your server actually queries out to see delivery dates. So any emails that get automatically sent out from EMS, whether that be a confirmation message, an automated report delivery, or a scheduled report or a notification, will go through that web service to be triggered for send. So that will come or appear to come from your server's IP address and not your local computer or your end user's local machine.
Thanks, Billie. Actually, there's one question for you here. It was mentioned, I think, in the deck today that there were some minor enhancements to the CPI, the campus planning interface. Could you talk to what that might include?
So as I said, they're minor. They're anything major. The main reason we needed to do updates in many of these areas was because we added new functionality like dependent UDFs and other things. So for those reasons why we had to make most of these modifications. There are not many front-end user functionalities that you're going to see with these updates.
Thanks, Akshay. Another question we just got coming in here is, are there going to be any changes to the look and feel of the web app being virtual EMS? In January, there will not be any updates to the way that looks and feels. There is another big release coming in June, which some of you may have heard about towards the end of last year or at our conference last year. More information about that will continue to roll out over the coming months, but the user interface, the user experience for the web app, and also the introduction of our new mobile app will be part of the next major release of EMS coming in June. So stay tuned for more on that. Let's see if we can get a couple more questions in here. Another question, do we have any visual analytics in the product today?
Sure. So a number of the statistic reports and as well as the sales reports do have built-in charting capabilities, as well as in the existing version today, as well as in the new version, any of your query reports that you build on your own that have the ability to report statistical data like quantities or pricing can actually generate charts. There's a number of different charting options available, from line charts, pie charts, 3D charts, as well as statistical number charts, and all of those are inherently exportable directly to Excel or other standard formats like comma-separated values, etc. Those also can be automatically, if they're a sales or statistics report, they can also automatically be triggered by the automated report delivery system.
Thanks, Billie. Let's see if we can get a couple more questions in here real quick. So one question we did have earlier, which did get answered, but I think it might be something useful for the whole audience to hear, is regarding the new desktop client update method, Billie.
Sure.
If somebody does not close the application and the system is updated overnight or something and they come in the morning, will they see those updates or will they need to close out again?
So if you're using the automated delivery method, the installation is silent, as I mentioned in the earlier slides, but that does require closing and reopening the application in order for it to recognize. The EMS deployment application, or the client that using the web deployment method, will only do one check per session to make sure that it's up to the latest version. So if it is not closed and reopened, likely, especially with normal builds and patches, the desktop client will continue to function normally. You won't see any of the enhancements, however, until you close and reopen the application.
Thanks, Billie. I do want to address a question that came up yesterday a few times. with regards to the web client. Some people were confused or concerned that they wouldn't be able to use the web client anymore at all come Friday. So just to clarify, if you want to continue using the web client as you are today, then you do not need to upgrade. This is not a mandatory upgrade coming on Friday. You are free to choose whether or not you do that. Obviously, if you do upgrade, that's when the web client piece will no longer be available. But if you are truly still using the web client and you do want to keep hold of that, you are not required to upgrade this Friday. You can continue to use the web client in its current form. So we just have a few more minutes here. There are a few more slides that I want to cover. If we haven't been able to answer your question, there are a couple here that I haven't been able to get to. We will address those offline. We'll go ahead and get back to you individually here. But I do want to move on to a couple more slides just to wrap the webinar up for today. So like I said, if there are any additional questions, it looks like there are just one or two that I will try to get to personally after today's webinar. If you have any more that come up, anything else that you think about, if it's support related, email support@emssoftware.com. If it's webinar related, you can email the events team at events@emssoftware.com. And if you have any sales related questions, if you're an EMS Lite user who wants to upgrade to get some of this new functionality, or if you're a professional user and you want to take advantage of the booking level check-in, you can contact your customer account executive for that to inquire about that upgrade process too. So just a quick recap in terms of what's coming next, in terms of the software being available and documentation. The general availability, the software will be released tomorrow. The specific time is not exactly known just yet, but we will email you. An email will come from support to all primary and technical contacts that we have to let you know that it is available. The software will be available for download in our support portal. You can get to that at emssoftware.com/support. There's no need for you to check that regularly throughout the day. We will email you as soon as that is available. In addition to the software itself being available, there are two documents that we can release to you today, the system requirements and the release notes. Those will be two PDF documents that we will send out to you this afternoon, along with the recordings from both yesterday and today's webinars. In addition, on Friday, alongside the software in the support portal, we will include those two PDFs as well as additional documentation, including user manuals, setup guides, and installation instructions. It is worth noting that we will have a new look and feel to our documentation in the support portal on Friday. We are transitioning away from these kind of long and downloadable PDF documents, and we're moving to more of a self-service web page built support portal. So that will be, all the documentation will be broken out into web pages and you'll be able to see it automatically in the new support portal. So you will not be downloading PDFs. So just be aware that there's a new user-friendly kind of experience that you can expect on Friday when you get into the support portal. We're pretty much at the top of the hour here, so I'm going to go ahead and call that good. Like I said, I'll address a couple of your questions that were not answered. If you do have any others, please feel free to email either support or events teams at emssoftware.com. I want to thank you again for joining us today, and we look forward to talking with you again soon. Bye, everybody.